So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Itzaelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find in a layer of understanding of the completion of the spring feast, mentioning of the autumn feast, and also the returning of the holy cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. So then we find these understanding very critical during our time, because as the nations are organizing themselves, then it is very important emphasizing a fact of more than 2,500 years ago. Absolutely during this time of the restoration period, no nation or person should take credit for any development during this time of the restoration. So then, let's make sure then when politicians they come and they try to explain what they think and so on and so forth, it's not because of their ability of governing. It's because the plan was already set more than 2,500 years ago. So let's make sure prior of the time of development, then we can admit 100% the Creator then has His hands upon the situation, and the situation was recorded in His holy word. So then, when countries coming out of the 1,000 years of deceit, and obviously they have scandalized their own countries so badly, it is very understandably important they have then around 36 months and then to get their subsystem straightened out. In other words, straighten out the crap they did themselves. Politicians, they have screwed around for so long, and then it's the time for themselves then to organize their own subsystems, because when the system becomes available, if their subsystems are not ready for it, then they must adopt the Chinese system. So let's make sure we understand and stay away from jargon from any kind of political person trying then to mesmerize the people by their own talks, whereas then the system is already given. We are only waiting for the time to download then the system in our computers and then doing trade. So if the nations are thinking they can make it a flowery type of speaking, mesmerizing the people then best forget it. So then, what will be the best for the nation then being ready for the system coming in the future? Obviously, updating their ports. Either people then they begin understanding then for what it is. Where do we get the answer from? The answer from the Messiah himself. Read the 8th chapter and also 10 chapters later. Explains very precisely in the freighters of the earth. What can you understand freighters? Let's then understand government. You find most of the people of the government, they are ignorant of the everyday living of the people. Some of the politicians, they don't know how to set up a fence in their backyard. Some of the politicians, they don't know how to start up then a freight label. Some of these people, they have no idea of manufacturing. It's the truth of it. So let me ask you this. Then when a person begins then listening of freighting, but then these people, they were so long screwing then the government, so their own governments are screwed up by their own people because they're incompetence. Then when they hear what the Messiah is saying, then they simply can't link with the situation. Oh, of course, they are incompetent. That's what makes people then incompetent. They can't link freighting and taxation and then system. So then, during this time where our nation then always walking around as big shots is repleted with incompetent politicians. Then they hear freighting. I think they disdain the word freighting because they consider it so low level based where they are at, though our country is bankrupt because of the incompetence of these people. And then they hear the word freighting and taxation, they consider themselves above. That's then what we understand synonymous of incompetence. So let's make sure then we understand leaders of this world. Our president is in Texas. He is the pretty money person. Our governor received a big share of the investment of some time ago, the incentives. And as you get a larger share of the investments, obviously then you can create more jobs. So let's make sure then we don't get mesmerized by their scoundrelized smiles and get down to what it means. Freighting, volume, freighters, those are in charge. So speaking of these countries, for instance, trying to get with the other leaders, making themselves important. You know what? They got 36 months to get their crap out of the way that they created themselves. When the system comes, then becomes a preparation for the stick of authority of the Ishmaelites. Because by then the Israelites or tabernacling then is already set up. So let's understand and remove the jargon from these incompetent leaders and governors, so then we understand the very core of investments and trade via online. So then if you are a person from the government, doesn't understand freighting, doesn't understand label, doesn't understand manufacturing, you were raised up in a very nice family, very rich, went to the university, never got the hands dirty. Our system is ruining because of you. Because you are an incompetent politician. You don't understand the economy. So then let's understand very clearly when the Messiah said in the freighters of the earth, he was explaining of volume of trade via freighting. Then you can understand taxation via freighting. Then you understand governments secondary and freighters primary. So then it's not a situation of, we have to get the leaders together and talk about problems. It is the reverse. They get to get their rears together and find out what they have done wrong and straighten out their own junkies, their own screwed ups, and make sure their subsystems are in line. Plain and simple. Because the system is already provided. The problem is politicians are inflating themselves with importance, and these politicians are no longer required. Let's understand what the Messiah said. And the freighters of the earth, very simply, the CEOs of freighting companies, those are in charge. Liking it or not liking it. At some point, the CEOs of the freighting companies, they're going to give orders to governments. So the best is listen and do it. So the time is very short. It's not these jargon of politicians, ignorant. Some of them are so badly ignorant, they don't understand what it means, the trade of the end, as if they would try to resolve their own personal crap or their own personal problems, and then try to find some sort of a union amongst the leaders themselves to make sure, they can make system working. It is the contrary. You know what the new system means? What the politicians should not do. So since we are during very simple times, what the politicians are trying, don't do what they are doing. Do the reverse. When they come and they talk, the best topic, what then politicians should not do? You know what is left at the end? Online trading. So then, since the system is worldwide and no person is exempt, the best is obviously upgrading the broadband of their countries. When they do their infrastructure basic obvious, then make sure optic cables are laid down at the same time electrical cables are. But then they got 36 months to get their own screw-ups straightened out. And this story, because it was then from other governments, we only then received what we got. You don't get over it. You got the system screwed up, you have to fix it. 36 months is the time that you got. If it doesn't get done until then, you have to adopt the Chinese system. I don't care if a person is from the Soviet Union or from any other country or Africa somewhere or South America, Central America. It is valid for every nation. So then, as these governments are understanding their own screwed-ups and what they should do to straighten it out for the next 36 months, then you understand the new system. And governments should be prepared of taking orders from the freighters. This means when there is then a volume of freight, a volume of parcels, merchandise must be delivered, then certain areas of any country around the world, some of those areas are very remote. So you don't have to be a genius of receiving then some information on the telephone, then the CEO of the freighting company saying, we want a road over there in this place. If you do not organize your city of having roads set up very fastly, not even you and the government would be useful. Private contractors can be hired. So let's make sure we understand freighting, so then the governments at least have some sort of a use, such as maintaining roads, maintaining electricity, maintaining then the basic services, water and so forth. But then, if they don't understand taxation and freighting, then governments have no use. Because when the computerized system becomes available, a simple information for the contractors and the problem is solved. If the freighters, they want a road, they contact the contractor, they can build a road. They can contact the contractors of then placing wires and telephone posts. Governments became obsolete. That's why the Messiah mentioned, and the freighters of the earth. So politicians, they understand they are not very important anymore. It's because of the natural fact of the system. When the system becomes available, a simple download renders the politicians at no use. First, because there is not a plan yet of taxation and freighting where then governments can deduct taxes via labeling. They don't have this system set up yet. As then factories and company and the private sector, they're going to be obviously involved with the system and their earnings, where the government can't read it. Then what's the use for governments? So it's not time of pompous words and coming together and try to find a reason. Each of those politicians must work very diligently, then straighten out their own crap, their own screwed ups. And if they want a very hot information, in quote, make sure you have fiber optics underground and people provided with internet and then a broadband. Mining is no longer complicated. Any person can go over there, get some picks and shovels. They can catch the ore themselves. People can organize themselves. They can come up with a depot of their own. People can go over there, dig out the ores, bring to the depot, and get their money.